There exists a law so powerful, so absolutely fundamental to the fabric of reality itself, that when Genevieve Behrend discovered it, everything she thought she knew about manifestation, about consciousness, about the very nature of existence, completely shattered and reformed into something far more magnificent. And yet this law has been forgotten, buried beneath centuries of misunderstanding, hidden in plain sight, while millions struggle and strain, trying to manifest their desires, using incomplete teachings when the real secret, the one law that makes everything else work, has been right here all along, waiting for those ready to receive it. And in the next minutes, I'm going to reveal to you this forgotten law, the lost teaching that Genevieve Behrend herself said was the missing piece that transformed her from a student into a master. Before we journey into the depths of this forgotten law, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to discover is not surface-level information. This is not beginner manifestation teaching. This is the advanced, esoteric knowledge that separates those who occasionally manifest from those who live in a constant state of creative mastery. And you need to be part of this community of conscious creators who are committed to going deeper than the masses. If you're tired of trying technique after technique, if you're exhausted from visualizing and affirming without consistent results, if you sense that there's something crucial missing from everything you've been taught, then you're in exactly the right place, because Genevieve Behrend discovered what was missing, and she tried to teach it, but the world wasn't ready. Most people couldn't grasp it, couldn't accept what it really meant. And so this teaching became lost, forgotten, obscured by simpler, more palatable versions of the truth. But you're different. You're here right now in this moment because something in you knows that you're ready for the real teaching, for the forgotten law that changes everything. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's dive into the mystery that has the power to unlock the hidden force that lies dormant within you, waiting to be awakened. The lost teaching revealed. Let me begin by telling you what this forgotten law is, because everything else we discuss will build upon this foundation. The forgotten law that Genevieve Behrend discovered and taught is this: consciousness is the only reality, and what you are conscious of being, you become, not what you want to become, not what you hope to become, not what you're trying to become, but what you are conscious of being right now, in this present moment, is what you are becoming, and will inevitably manifest as your physical reality. Now you might be thinking that sounds simple enough, but let me tell you, there are depths within this law that most people never penetrate. Layers of understanding that, when truly grasped, will revolutionize everything about how you create your reality. Because almost everyone who tries to manifest is operating from a fundamental misunderstanding. They're trying to become something they're not. They're trying to get something they don't have. They're trying to attract something from outside themselves. And this very approach, this very consciousness of lack and separation, is what keeps them trapped in the endless cycle of desire without fulfillment. Behrend understood something that most teachers miss. You cannot manifest what you want. You can only manifest what you are. And what you are is determined not by your circumstances, not by your past, not by what you see in the mirror, but by what you are conscious of being in this eternal now moment, the nature of consciousness. To truly understand this forgotten law, we must go deep into the nature of consciousness itself, because consciousness is not what you think it is. Most people believe consciousness is something they have, like a tool or a faculty, but Behrend's teaching reveals that consciousness is what you are. It is not that you have consciousness. It is that you are consciousness expressing itself in physical form, and everything you experience, every person you meet, every circumstance you encounter, every condition of your life is consciousness made visible. Your consciousness made visible. Now here's where it gets profound and mystical. Consciousness is not individual, in the sense that you have your consciousness and I have mine, and we're all separate islands of awareness. No, there is only one consciousness appearing as many. Just as the ocean is one body of water appearing as countless waves, you are universal consciousness, individualized. You are the infinite, wearing a temporary mask called your personality. And this means that when you change your consciousness, you don't attract a different reality. You become a different reality, because consciousness and manifestation are not two separate things. Consciousness is the substance of all manifestation. What you see, hear, touch, taste, and smell are all solidified consciousness. They are consciousness slowed down to the vibrational frequency that your physical senses can perceive. This is why Behrend taught that you must change your consciousness before you will see any lasting change in your circumstances, because trying to change your life without changing your consciousness is like trying to change your reflection without changing yourself. It's impossible. The reflection must correspond to the original, what you are conscious of being. Now we must explore the most critical part of this forgotten law. What does it mean to be conscious of being something? Because this is where most people completely miss the mark. They think being conscious of something means thinking about it or wanting it or visualizing it. But that's not what Behrend taught at all. To be conscious of being something means to have the inner conviction, the deep, unshakable knowing that you are that thing right now, not in the future, not when circumstances align, not when you've earned it or deserved it, but now in this present moment. Let me give you an example. If you desire wealth, you must become conscious of being wealthy. And being conscious of being wealthy doesn't mean thinking about wealth or wanting wealth or imagining having wealth. It means having the inner feeling, the inner knowing that you are wealthy right now. Even if your bank account says otherwise, even if you're surrounded by bills, even if every physical circumstance suggests lack, you must be able to close your eyes, turn your attention inward, and feel yourself as a wealthy person. And I don't mean pretending. I don't mean lying to yourself. I mean shifting your consciousness to the state where wealth is your natural condition, where abundance is simply who you are. This is the part that Behrend struggled to teach, because people would say, "But I'm not wealthy. How can I be conscious of being wealthy when I'm clearly not?" And this is the great paradox, the great mystery at the heart of the forgotten law. You must be it before you see it. You must be conscious of being it before it manifests as your physical reality, because consciousness always comes first. Manifestation always comes second. There is no exception to this law. The feeling of being. Behrend discovered through her own experience and through her deep study with Thomas Troward that the key to shifting consciousness is feeling, not emotion exactly, but a deeper kind of knowing that manifests as feeling. The feeling of being is the secret. The feeling of being wealthy, the feeling of being loved, the feeling of being successful, the feeling of being healthy. Whatever you desire, you must capture the feeling of already being that thing and live in that feeling, regardless of what your senses are telling you. Now, this requires a complete reversal of how most people operate. Most people allow their feelings to be determined by their circumstances. They feel poor because they see lack. They feel unloved because they're alone. They feel unsuccessful because they haven't achieved their goals. But this is backwards. This is the consciousness of the slave, not the master. The master knows that feeling creates circumstances, not the other way around. So the practice that Behrend taught, and this is the practical application of the forgotten law, is to deliberately assume the feeling of being what you desire to be, and to wear that feeling like a garment throughout your day. When you wake in the morning, before you open your eyes, before you engage with the world, you ask yourself, what would it feel like if I already were the person I desire to be? And you don't just think about it. You actually generate that feeling in your body. You feel it in your chest, in your solar plexus. You let it fill every cell of your being. And then you rise and move through your day from that feeling state, not trying to get anywhere, not trying to become anything, but simply being what you already are in consciousness. The double thread of all experience. Here is where Behrend's teaching becomes truly mystical and profound. She taught that there is a double thread running through all experience, the inner and the outer, the invisible and the visible, the consciousness and the manifestation. And these two threads are always perfectly matched. They must be, because they are not actually two separate things. They are one thing viewed from two different perspectives. Your outer world is always a perfect reflection of your inner consciousness, always without exception. If you are experiencing lack in your outer world, it is because you are conscious of being lacking in your inner world. If you are experiencing love in your outer world, it is because you are conscious of being loved in your inner world. The outer can never contradict the inner, because the outer is the inner made visible. Now here's the part that was lost. The part that Behrend tried to teach but few understood. You cannot change the outer by working on the outer. You cannot create wealth by manipulating money. You cannot create love by manipulating people. You cannot create health by manipulating your body. I mean, you can try and you might see temporary results, but nothing lasting. Nothing real will ever come from trying to change the reflection. The only place where real change can occur is in consciousness. Change your consciousness and the outer world must change, because it has no choice. It is your consciousness made visible. This is law. This is principle. This is the forgotten truth that unlocks everything, living from the end. One of the most powerful practices that Behrend taught as part of this forgotten law was what she called living from the end, rather than living in the journey toward your goal, rather than constantly affirming I will be or I'm becoming. You must live as if you already are. Because the truth is in consciousness, you already are. Whatever you desire to be, the infinite potential of the universe includes every possible state of being, and you have the power to select which state you will occupy in consciousness. When you truly grasp this, when you really get it, you realize that manifestation is not about creating something new. It's about selecting from what already exists in the infinite field of possibility and claiming it as your present reality in consciousness. So if you desire to be wealthy, you don't affirm, I will be wealthy, because that places wealth in the future, and the future never comes. The future is always future. Instead, you claim, I am wealthy now, and you live from that end. You make decisions from the consciousness of wealth. You move through the world with the inner knowing of wealth. You feel yourself as wealthy, and you do this before you see any evidence in your outer world. This is living from the end, and it requires tremendous faith. Not blind belief, but the deep knowing that comes from understanding this law. Because when you know that consciousness is the only reality, and that what you are conscious of being you must become, then faith becomes natural, inevitable. The resistance and the struggle. Now I must address something that Behrend encountered constantly in her teaching, and that is the resistance, the struggle that people experience when they try to apply this forgotten law, because it goes against everything the world has taught you. The world has taught you that you must see it to believe it, but this law says you must believe it to see it. The world has taught you that you are a victim of circumstances, but this law says you are the creator of circumstances. The world has taught you that some people are lucky and some aren't, but this law says everyone is living out their own consciousness made visible. The resistance comes from the ego, from the part of you that has identified with your circumstances, with your history, with your limitations, and when you try to shift your consciousness to a new state, the ego screams, no, this isn't real. You're just pretending. Who do you think you are? And this is where most people give up. They take the ego's voice as truth, and they abandon the practice. They go back to trying to manifest from a consciousness of lack and separation. But Behrend taught that you must persist. You must continue to assume the feeling of being what you desire to be, even when the ego protests, even when circumstances seem to contradict you, even when it feels like nothing is happening, because something is always happening in consciousness, and what happens in consciousness must eventually manifest in physical reality. This is not a maybe. This is not a hope. This is one of the most mystical aspects of the forgotten law that Behrend explored is the relationship between consciousness and time, because time as you experience it is not what you think it is. Time is not a river. Carrying you from past to future time is a construct of consciousness, a way of organizing experience. But in the realm of pure consciousness, in the eternal now, where the real you exists, there is no time, there is only being. And this means that when you shift your consciousness to a new state, when you become conscious of being what you desire to be, that state already exists. It's not coming. It's not on its way. It already is in the timeless realm of consciousness, and the physical manifestation is simply the crystallization of what already exists in consciousness now. Here's the profound part. The amount of time it takes for a manifestation to appear in your physical world is directly related to how completely you have assumed the new state in consciousness. If you are wavering, if you are doubting, if you keep returning to the old consciousness of lack, then the manifestation will be delayed, not because the universe is withholding it, but because you are not yet fully conscious of being it. But if you can assume the new state completely, if you can live in it, dwell in it, refuse to return to the old consciousness, then manifestation can happen almost instantaneously, because there is no gap between consciousness and manifestation, except the gap created by your own divided consciousness. The practice of revision. Behrend taught a powerful practice that is directly related to this forgotten law, and that is the practice of revision. Because if consciousness is the only reality, then you can revise your past by changing your consciousness of it. Now, this might sound strange or even impossible, but think about it. What is your past? It's not a fixed thing existing somewhere out there. It's a memory. It's a collection of impressions held in your consciousness. And if you change those impressions, you change your past. And when you change your past, you change your present, because your present is built upon your past. So the practice of revision is this: at the end of each day, before you sleep, you review the events of your day, and any event that didn't go as you wished, any interaction that was less than ideal, any circumstance that suggested lack or limitation, you revise it in your imagination. You replay it the way you wish it had gone. You feel the revised version as real. You accept it as the true version, and you let the old version go. And what happens is profound, because you're not just changing a memory. You're changing your consciousness, and when you change your consciousness, you change what you will attract and experience going forward. This is not about denying reality. This is about understanding that consciousness is the only reality, and you have the power to choose which version of reality you will be conscious of. The law of assumption. At the core of the forgotten law is what Behrend called the law of assumption, and this is perhaps the most practical application of everything we've discussed. The law of assumption states that whatever you assume to be true becomes true in your experience, because assumption creates reality, not the other way around. So if you assume you are limited, you will experience limitation. If you assume you are powerful, you will experience power. If you assume that life is difficult, you will experience difficulty. If you assume that the universe supports you, you will experience support. Your assumptions are not neutral. They are creative. They are the very mechanism through which you shape your reality. And here's the key insight that most people miss. You are always assuming something you cannot. Not assume you are always conscious of being something. The question is, are you consciously choosing what you assume, or are you unconsciously assuming based on past experience, based on what others have told you, based on what you see in your current circumstances? The master, the one who has understood the forgotten law, consciously chooses their assumptions. They decide what they will be conscious of being, and they maintain that consciousness regardless of appearances. And this is the great work. This is the path to mastery. Why this teaching was forgotten. Now we must address why this teaching became forgotten, why something so powerful, so fundamental was lost to the masses, and the answer is both simple and profound. This teaching was forgotten because it requires something that most people are unwilling to give. It requires you to take complete responsibility for your life. Every aspect of it, every circumstance, every condition, every experience. If consciousness is the only reality and what you are conscious of being, you become, then there are no victims, there are no excuses. There is no one to blame. Everything you experience is the manifestation of your own consciousness. And for most people, this is too much to accept. It's easier to believe that you're a victim of circumstances, that the world is happening to you, that if only external conditions would change, then you could be happy, could be successful, could be fulfilled. But Behrend knew the truth, and she taught it fearlessly. You are not a victim, you are a creator. And until you accept this, fully, completely, without reservation, you will remain trapped in the old consciousness, the consciousness of lack and limitation and separation. So the teaching was forgotten, not because it was hidden, but because people chose not to see it. They chose the comfort of victimhood over the responsibility of creatorship. But those who are ready, those who have grown tired of making excuses, tired of waiting for circumstances to change, tired of living as less than what they truly are, these are the ones who find this teaching, and when they apply it, when they really live it, everything changes. The inner shift that changes everything. There comes a moment in every true student's journey, A moment that Behrend herself experienced and taught others to recognize, a moment when something clicks, when the intellectual understanding suddenly becomes experiential, knowing when you stop trying to apply the law and you realize you are the law. This is the inner shift that changes everything, and it cannot be forced. It cannot be rushed. It comes when you are ready, when you have prepared the soil of your consciousness through diligent practice, through persistent assumption, through living from the end, through refusing to accept the evidence of your senses as final. And in that moment, everything you've been learning suddenly makes sense. You realize that you are not in the universe. The universe is in you. You realize that you are not trying to manifest things, you are manifesting everything all the time, and you can choose what to manifest by choosing what to be conscious of. You realize that there is no power outside of you, no force you need to convince or persuade, because you are the power. You are the force expressing itself in individualized form. This is the awakening. This is the enlightenment. This is what Behrend was pointing toward with all of her teachings. And once this shift occurs, you can never go back to the old way of seeing, because you have tasted the truth, and nothing else will satisfy. The sacred responsibility. With this knowledge comes a sacred responsibility, because now you know. You know that you are creating your reality through your consciousness. You know that what you are conscious of being, you become. You know that there is no one to blame and no one to credit but yourself. And with this knowing comes the responsibility to use this power wisely, to consciously choose states of consciousness that serve not only you but all of life, because you are not separate from life. You are life expressing itself as you, and what you do to yourself you do to the whole. Behrend taught that the highest use of this law is not to manifest trinkets and toys, though you can certainly manifest those if you desire. But the highest use is to become conscious of being the highest version of yourself, to claim your divine nature, to live as the infinite creative power that you truly are. And when you do this, when you rise to this level of consciousness, you naturally manifest everything you need, and more, because abundance is the natural state of one who knows themselves as infinite. Breaking free from mental slavery. One of the most powerful aspects of the forgotten law is that it breaks the chains of mental slavery that bind most of humanity. Because, make no mistake, most people are slaves. Slaves to circumstances, slaves to opinions, slaves to their own past, slaves to limiting beliefs that were programmed into them before they were old enough to question. But when you understand that consciousness is the only reality, that what you are conscious of being you become, you realize that you can free yourself at any moment. You can choose right now in this instant to be conscious of being free, to be conscious of being powerful, to be conscious of being whole and complete and perfect. And that choice, that shift in consciousness, begins the process of manifesting that reality in your physical world. Behrend herself was a living example of this. She was not born into privilege. She did not have advantages that others lacked. She simply understood this law and applied it, and through the application of this law, she transformed herself from an ordinary woman struggling in the business world into a spiritual teacher who studied with the great Troward and went on to teach thousands. And if she could do it, and if countless others throughout history have done it, then so can you, because the power is not in circumstances, the power is in consciousness. The daily practice of conscious creation. Let me give you now the daily practice that incorporates everything we've discussed, because knowledge without application is worthless, and Behrend was always practical, always focused on how to actually use these principles in everyday life. So here is the practice. First thing in the morning, before you rise, before you check your phone, before you engage with the world, you ask yourself, who do I choose to be today? What state of consciousness will I occupy? And you select it consciously, deliberately. You decide, I will be conscious of being successful today, or I will be conscious of being loved today, or I will be conscious of being healthy today. Whatever state you choose. And then you generate the feeling of already being that thing. You let that feeling fill your entire being. You marinate in it throughout the day. Whenever you notice yourself slipping back into old consciousness, whenever you catch yourself feeling lack or limitation or fear, you immediately return to your chosen state. You reassume the feeling of being what you decided to be, and you do this as many times as necessary, 100 times a day if needed. Because this is the work. This is the practice of conscious creation before sleep. You review your day, not to judge yourself, not to criticize, but to observe where you maintained your chosen consciousness and where you slipped. And then you revise anything that needs revising, and you go to sleep in the feeling of being what you desire to be. Because sleep is when the subconscious mind is most receptive, when your consciousness can impress itself most deeply upon the creative medium of the universe. And so we come to the end of our exploration of the forgotten law that unlocks your hidden power. But this is truly just the beginning, because now you possess the knowledge that Genevieve Behrend struggled to teach, that was lost to the masses for generations. You know that consciousness is the only reality. You know that what you are conscious of being, you become. You know that manifestation is not about attracting things from outside yourself, but about claiming states of consciousness that already exist in the infinite field of possibility, and then living from those states until they manifest as your physical reality. But knowing is not enough. You must apply. You must practice. You must be willing to take complete responsibility for every aspect of your life and accept that you are the creator, not the victim. You must be willing to assume the feeling of being what you desire to be. Before you see any evidence, you must be willing to live from the end, to persist in the face of contradictory appearances, to choose your consciousness deliberately every single day. This is the path of the master. This is the way of conscious creation, and it is available to you right now in this moment. Because the power is not coming. The power is not something you will develop in the future. The power is here now, and it is you. You are the creative force. You are consciousness expressing itself. You are the infinite wearing the mask of the finite. And when you truly grasp this, when you live from this, understanding everything changes. I want to encourage you one final time to subscribe to this channel, because we are committed to bringing you these deep teachings, to going beyond the surface-level manifestation advice that saturates the internet, and diving into the real esoteric knowledge that transforms lives. Comment below and tell me what shifted for you as you listened, what clicked, what opened, what new understanding dawned in your consciousness, and most importantly, tell me what state you will choose to be conscious of being starting today, because that choice, that decision to consciously select your state of being, is where your new life begins. Remember Genevieve Behrend's forgotten law. Consciousness is the only reality. What you are conscious of being, you become, so choose wisely. Assume completely live from the end and watch as your entire world transforms to match your inner consciousness. This is not theory. This is not philosophy. This is practical mysticism. This is the forgotten law that unlocks your hidden power, and now it is yours to use. May you rise to the full stature of your divine nature. May you claim your power as a conscious creator, and may your life become a living testament to the truth of this forgotten law. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being ready to receive this teaching, and may infinite blessings flow to you now and always.